Here we are once more to continue looking at the coinage of the Severan Dynasty. This is the second part of a 2-episode special on the Severans. In case you haven't seen the previous episode, make sure to check it out. I'll leave a link in the video description down below. Last episode, we left off with Caracalla meeting a violent end. A plot by one of his praetorians, an officer called Macrinus, who was raised by his troops as the new emperor. With the premature death of Geta and Caracalla, it seemed like the Severans were deemed to die off, but a series of fatal mistakes by Macrinus and some amazing political maneuvers by the surviving Severans meant they were soon to be back on the top of the Roman hierarchy. I'm going to go on a small tangent here for a second and quote Machiavelli. Men ought to be treated well or crushed, because men can avenge themselves of lighter injuries. Of more serious ones, they cannot. Macrinus just declared open war to the Severan family by getting rid of Caracalla. In typical ancient Roman fashion, this would require him to go on a purging spree, a purging campaign, and get rid of every single Severan left, man, woman or child. Yet he did not, he just let them be. Yes, the two main male representatives of the dynasty were dead, but the Severans had in its ranks very powerful and influential women. We already discussed Julia Domna, the widow of Septimius Severus, but we need to be introduced to some more Julias here, all very important, and all had coins struck on their names. These ladies were Julia Maesa, Julia Soemias, and Julia Mamaea. I know, plenty of Julias, but let's break it down. Julia Maesa was the elder sister of Julia Domna and mother of Julia Soemias and Julia Mamaea. She lived all of her life attached to the Severan family in the imperial palace and around the imperial court, and as a result she was fantastically rich. After Caracalla's assassination and Macrinus' fatal mistake of letting her and her family live, she returned to her native Syria on the Roman East, where she used her influence to promote her two grandsons, the future emperors Elagabalus and Severus Alexander, as the legitimate heirs to the imperial throne. While she was moving east and preparing her machinations, Macrinus kept doing mistakes. He revoked the bonuses from the troops, lost support from his main generals and the Senate, and as quickly as he climbed to the top, he saw himself without any allies and any support to his position as emperor. Julia Maesa quickly gathered support from the disgruntled troops by offering part of her fortune and put forward her grandson, the future emperor Elagabalus, as an alternative to Macrinus. The troops quickly hailed Elagabalus as the new emperor, and Macrinus was killed. The Severans were back in charge. Since Elagabalus was only in charge because of the incredible political skills of her grandmother, I would say I'm going to show a coin of Julia Maesa first, before his. After all, she earned it. Let's take a look at this denarius struck between 218 and 222 AD. The denarii featuring her bust are very common and very affordable, and I strongly recommend getting one for the incredible character she was, a reminder of the powerful women of Roman history. Visually, her coinage is very straightforward, following the typical formula for Roman empresses. An image of the empress, with her hair tightly tied to the back of her hair with an elaborate knot, and the legends, Julia Maesa Augusta. Heading to the reverse, we have the seated and veiled image of Pudicitia, one of the main virtues of the ideal Roman woman, of being discreet, chaste, and faithful to her husband. The legends are straightforward. Pudicitia. We then get to the new emperor, Sextus Varius Avitus Bassianus, known to us as Elagabalus. Why such a name? Because before assuming the emperorship, he was the chief priest of the cult of the sun god El Gabal. If there's one character that approaches the levels of Caligula in sheer madness and extravagance, Elagabalus was that man. There are plenty of videos on YouTube giving details on how crazy his reign was. but I won't enter into many details here, mostly because I fear of this video getting demonetized if I start getting into the details. It really was something else. His coinage, however, looks much more normal compared to the insane emperor that he was. What we have here is an Antoninianus. We've so far only seen denarii. The Antoninianus is a double denarius, distinguishable for the radiate crown on the emperor's head. This piece is dated to the year 220, also from the Mint of Rome. On the obverse, we have this very young-looking bust of the emperor, as he was just 16 at the time this coin was struck, wearing some nice draperies over a military cuirass. And on the legends, we have his official name as emperor, Imperator Caesar Marcus Aurelius Antoninus Augustus. Notice no sign of Bassianus or Elagabalus here. Elagabalus was more of a nickname, and the Severan emperors routinely adopted the names of the emperors of the previous dynasty to gain some sort of legitimacy. On the reverse, we have Fides, the goddess of loyalty. In this case, as the legends say, Fides Militum, the fealty of the soldiers. We can see Fides is sitting next to two military standards. I find this coin lovely and a bit ironic. Elagabalus' grandmother's money is what got the army to back him up in the first place. And now, on that same money, we have an advertisement on how the army was faithful to the emperor. Yeah, right. Imagine if the silver stopped flowing to their pockets and Fides would come out of the picture really quickly. Apart from the fat bribe that Julia Maesa gave to the soldiers, she also fabricated a narrative that Elagabalus was the son of the dead emperor Caracalla with her daughter, Julia Soemias. It is highly unlikely that this was true, but as the mother of the new emperor, Julia Soemias also had coins struck on her name. So let's take a look at this example, dated from around 218 to 222. I have the impression that the die engravers at the mint were tired of minting so many coins for so many different Julias, because it looks like the portrait of Julia Soemias is almost an exact copy of that of Julia Maesa. In any case, we have the bust of the empress and the legends, Julia Soemias Augusta. Heading to the reverse, we have Venus, the goddess of love and fertility. A very fitting deity to be featured on the coin of the mother of the current emperor. Venus is seen here holding an apple and the scepter. The legends read Venus Celestis, the heavenly Venus. Interesting to see that the legends make reference to heavens, and we have a little star right next to the deity. Elagabalus' many scandals are too many to count here, but one of these scandals that does have to do with numismatics was when he divorced his first wife, a distinguished noblewoman called Julia Paula, and yes, I know, he had another Julia, and he took a Vestal virgin as his next wife, something considered a massive sin in Roman religion. Think about, I don't know, what can I make it that sounds equivalent? Think about the current Pope, all of a sudden taking one of the Vatican's nuns as his wife. Yeah, that level of heretical. Here we have a denarius of poor old Julia Paula, struck between 219 and 220. So on the obverse we have the rather generic looking bust of Julia, very similar to the other Julias we've seen previously. Heading to the reverse, we have Concordia, the goddess of concord, agreement, and fair dealings, another quite typical reverse for coins of empresses. Elagabalus' degeneracy in the eyes of Roman aristocracy and the society at large was simply too much. People started backing up his cousin, the young Severus Alexander, and it seems like Julia Maesa also switched her preferences to the young Alexander. In 222, Elagabalus and his mother were both killed, and the 14-year-old boy was raised as emperor. Alexander would be surrounded by a body of advisors, regents, and administrators, including his mother and grandmother, who would take control of the empire while he was just a figurehead really. This denarius of him, dated to 235, shows a bearded Alexander. He had a surprisingly long reign, 13 years in fact, the longest reign since Antoninus Pius. His coins are very abundant because of that, and are some of the most common 3rd century denarii you can find. As I already said, we have a laureate bust of the emperor, and the legends read Imperator Alexander Pius Augustus. Looking at the reverse, we have Annona, the incarnation of the grain dole given to the poor citizens of Rome, a vast quote-unquote social program that allowed such a massive city like Rome to sustain a 1 million people population all the way back into ancient times. The legends, however, don't make reference to Annona directly, but to Providentia Augusta, so a propaganda of the emperor as someone well prepared, worried on making sure Rome would be well supplied with grain. But the real power behind Alexander's long reign was, as I said, a body of advisors, especially his mother, the last of the Julias we will see today, Julia Mamaea. Her heavy influence over the young emperor would turn out to be their downfall, really. She was too stingy with the troops and was the classical example of a helicopter parent, meaning when it was time for young Alexander to lead his troops to be an emperor, he was a coward. And when it was time to give the cash bonuses that the army was by then accustomed to, Mamaea would be too stingy to let them have it. The result? The last of the Severans were cut down by the troops. So let's check out this denarius from Julia Mamaea, attributed to 226, also from the Mint of Rome. On the obverse, we can see the bust of the Empress, finally a slightly different hairstyle compared to the other Julias, and it seems like Julia Mamaea had curlier hair, as we can see. She also wears a stefan, a kind of tiara, and the legends read, Julia Mamaea Augusta. On the reverse we have Vesta, or Vesta, more appropriately said, the goddess of home, domestic life, and the protector of temples. As we can see, she holds a scepter and a little statue, a palladium, which was placed at temples during ceremonies. Notice the weird crack-like feature on the fuse of this coin. It seems like the die used to strike this coin had a massive crack in the middle, and this was imprinted in the final coin, meaning that this die was likely long overdue to be replaced. And so the great Severan Dynasty ended, with young Severus Alexander and his mother embracing one another, being cut down by their own troops. Alexander's death typically marks the beginning of the crisis of the 3rd century. Which is your favorite historical character from the Severan Dynasty? Let us know in the comment section down below. I hope you enjoyed this 2-part special episode. Remember to leave a like and subscribe if you did. Happy collecting, and I'll see you soon.